Welcome to The Poet Behind the Microphone, Episode 9. I'm your host and tour guide, John Booker. I'm here to give you shelter from the storm, experiences from the roads of wonder, the abstract, the down and out. I want to feed the marrow of your soul with poems, stories, insight, recommendations. So sit back, pour a glass of wine or whatever's handy, and go with me. It's a beautiful day here out in California. Dickens Beach has got sunshine, plenty of waves. I saw a couple of seals swimming by. There's ships way out on the horizon. Let's walk along the old wooden pier here at Dickens Beach and head down to our favorite bar, Cafe Electrum. Let's go inside and order some drinks, maybe some food. I want to share some poems with you. Are you ready for some poetry? This first poem is called Travel Blades. Made of strong metal, snapped and curved, in a factory where English is not spoken. It takes the body, the aeroplane, up into the sky, past birds and clouds, across the watery boundaries, into strange lands. For many years they seek. They travel even at night, carrying people and cargo, fruit, sometimes monkeys, sawing through rainy storms, icy droplets, tornado winds, and perfect skies, fast and in a hurry, where dreams await, and lives are knitted together, are torn apart by war, and wounded or killed or coming home, or changing the course of one's life. Travel blades pull the air and take you there. High windows. Way up there, a century or so ago, 'twas a slower era during a season of heavy snow. A painter of unknown stature worked alone and sad. He painted in obscurity, in images unclad. From his high window he made the street alive. From his high window he longed for a wife. Days became years as he toiled in lonely moods. Candles told the stories and their platitudes. His pain was always there, as his hands made the beauty. He saw a young maiden going about her duty. She shopped in the market and made a daily walk. He fell in love from a window, his feelings so unlocked. He just wanted to go down there and say hello and more. His courage always waned, but desire went on to soar. He decided on the day as he rubbed his stubbled chin, but the ship had already sailed, and she never appeared again. This one's called Tomb of the Unknown. In the future, maybe 20 or 30 years from now, a school bus will stop and unload at a monument, parked from the past. The tour guide will lecture them as they walk in a single file. The guard will recall the colorful past stories of each monument, provide an interactive lesson. The students will ask questions to clear up any myths or misconceptions about what they might have heard. Near the tour's end, one of the students will point and ask, "What is that little old monument over there?" The tour guide will lead them over to it and explain. "This is a tomb. Anyone know what a tomb is?" "A grave of sorts," one student will offer. "Yes, but whose?" "It's a tomb of the unknown caller." "What's that?" "Long time ago, when we still used devices to communicate, they became portable. We started getting contacts from strange strangers we didn't know or didn't want to talk with." "I've heard of them. They were called phones." "Yes, that's right." "But why were they doing that? It seems so weird." "They were selling things on these devices every day. People hated them and tried to stop them. They passed laws, and for a while they slowed down, but they were doing this several times a day. As years went by, They took over the phones day and night. They never quit calling. Finally, one day they were outlawed totally, but they kept doing it. A militia was formed. They were hunted down and killed. It took years, but finally they were all wiped out. This is the last one found. Do they have a name? No, their name was stripped away. They're just known as the Tomb of the Unknown Caller. Faded memories. She rode the train back to her hometown. It rained that day, puddles all around. It had been years since she left this sweet place. She wondered if anyone would remember her face. In her head were pictures of an idyllic past. When life seemed so perfect, good times appeared to last. When manners were for certain and doors unlocked, life was as solid as a grandfather clock. She left the station and walked down empty streets, looking for anyone to hello and greet. Much to her chagrin, the town had up and died. Nothing was familiar. She began to cry. Faded old memories and a few rusty signs was all was left of this mythical time. She boarded the train and shut the small door. Faded old memories and all its lost lore. This one's simply called Old Poets. Kind of like me. Down in the Bowery, or way out in North Beach, to gather and sit in solitude, to ponder and think, to drink and get high, to curse and tell stories of Ginsberg and his lovers, discovering Rimbaud and Henry Miller. Long gone Paris, bookstores and pauper life. Alexander Pope lived and died. How sweet Maya Angelou was on the street. How Dante Alighieri must still be alive. Sometimes at midnight they gather, feed the stray cats in the graveyard, quote Bukowski, read from Aleister Crowley, and drink to D.H. Lawrence. But mostly in coffee shops and bars they frequent and dwell. To write the verses of mankind, they listen for voices in the thin air. They allow their gift to cast its wonderful spell. Watching the 101. Black ribbon of humanity grabbing the edge of America, over mountains, deserts, green fields, towns, and cities. Biggest trucks and smallest cars vie for a space, carrying their stories, dreams, and loads. This old highway's been home to the writers, the music makers, the movie makers, the fruit pickers. Day and night, the traffic moves and then disappears. Along the blue ocean and gold-laden mountains. This road has seen the rains come in torrents and the earthquakes that follow. Car after car, they drive past redwoods, the big cities, just to sit and watch this ballet of metal, sifting through problems, a display unable to categorize. This one's called Civilized, question mark, question mark, question mark. I was raised in a world where being nice to others was expected. I was raised in a world where manners were demanded. I was raised in a church where the golden rule was real. I was raised to respect those around me. I was raised to be humble and not get the big head. I was punished for being rude. I was punished for interrupting anyone. I was raised in a world where people were nice to me. I was raised in a generation where peace and love was the mantra. I was raised in a generation that sang, all you need is love. Now I live in a world where the most vile things are said. Now I live in a world where strangers are rude. Now I live in a time where education has little value. Now I live in a time where bookstores close. Now I live in a world of identity politics. Now I live among religious nuts. Now I live where libraries are only used by the homeless. Now I live in a time where romance is dead. Now I live in a time where there's no talk of the future. Now I live in a civilized world. Village musings. Park cars fade in the twilight air. Drinkers and walkers take time to share. A playhouse is open with a few in line. A bar's bright lights glow a drunken shine. A thinker is smoking, dwelling on the past, of younger dreams that ran by fast. His fingers have ink spots, scars, and stains. They ache terribly whenever it rains. A dog goes by, pauses to look at the closed stores, windows facing old books. Darkening skies, and the stars pop so deep. Later on, the thinker just wants to sleep. A village is pulsing all through the night. Tomorrow will be another village delight. Under orange lights. In this old dwelling where coffee and words do flow, gather riders and wanderers, those who want the show. Dark and funky, so stated and ancient these walls. Words and ideas come easily and crawl into the screenplays, page after page, flowing into mouths as they trod the stage. Novels and heartaches to lovers that understand. Hopes and dreams ride on these stories, unplanned. Famous and the unknown gather to ponder and work. Look out at the windows as the traffic cars glide and lurch. Under these lights lies the comfort to create. Early and late comers squeeze into surroundings ornate. The neighbors know how much it matters to sit and listen to the endless caffeine chatter. Hopefully it will remain for years to come, and the lights shine on the white rider's drum. This last one's not really a poem, but a tribute to Vesuvio Cafe. One of my favorite places on earth to visit is Vesuvio Cafe, an old North Beach bar in San Francisco. North Beach is right up the hill from Fisherman's Wharf and adjacent to Chinatown. Just standing on the sidewalk is breathtaking. The cool breeze from the bay mixes with the foreign smells of authentic Chinese cuisine. Fruit markets bulge with sights rarely seen at your local grocer. Third-story windows have wet laundry hanging from wires. Next door to the bar is its cousin, City Lights Books, home to the beat poets, writers, revolutionaries, activists, curious tourists. While sipping an Anchor steam from the second-floor open window, your eyes look at framed copies of Howl, under the spell of a street musician playing saxophone, jazz, and blues. The bar's been around since right after World War II. It's a popular watering hole for Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, Neil Cassidy, and their friends. The bar still opens at 6 a.m. and visited by old poets having Old Crow whiskey for breakfast, discussing their lives. I love just being there and feeling the vibe of the many ghosts that have sat there and walked around. I was privileged to meet one of the last living beat poets in New York several years ago when I was visiting one of my sons. He took me to the Bowery Poetry Club across from CBGB's as Taylor Mead was doing his Friday night set. Mead was also an actor, had been in Jim Jarmusch's Coffee and Cigarettes about that time. Taylor was Andy Warhol's favorite poet and a regular at the factory. The old poet was in his mid-80s when I met him, had fascinating stories about Jack Kerouac, Clint Eastwood, and a host of others. Taylor was born to a wealthy family. His father got him a job on the Chicago Stock Exchange. When he read On the Road, he quit his well-paying job, drove to San Francisco, and like many others, discovered himself. There's a story of him being so drunk at Vesuvio, he stripped bare naked, climbed up on the bar, and read aloud from On the Road as customers clapped and cheered. For you who want to discover yourself, I recommend trying Vesuvio. Well, back here at Cafe Electrum, it is busy. The bar is full. Waiters are carrying platters of drinks, food. Pour yourself some more wine or whatever else that you enjoy. And it's story time. We're going to go back to the Everwinter Files, the Frolic Room Prophet. Hope you enjoy it. Chapter 3, Point Magoo. The Packard motored and purred down Highway 1, around the curves and the dips, stretching the road from Santa Monica to Malibu. Ambrose yanked the wheel to the right at Topanga Canyon and began to climb its walls past creeks, wooded brush, and a green netherworld. He came to a stop at Blue Seal Liquor, ambled inside. For the next hour he peppered Jesse Maxwell, as only an experienced detective could. He found several missing pieces that Jimmy McFarland, in his haste to report back to the office, forgot to ask. Not only did Ambrose discover Maxwell carried her grocery items in the car, he gave a sparkling description of the Lincoln's interior and its contents. He also revealed a short conversation with Gail Gaines after she was safe behind the wheel. On his way back to the Santa Monica Boulevard, to the office, he formed a theory he thought would hold water. Gail Gaines was holed up in some cabin, motel room, or secret hideaway up the California coast. What troubled him was the unanswered questions. Why? Dorothy Metzger helped him load the Packard and wished him luck and returned to the office to field calls from there. Ambrose, Carl, and Jimmy motored west to the coast and headed up Highway 101 to find the trail of Gail Gaines. By this time, the newspapers were obsessed with her disappearance, and several Hollywood columnists were speculating as to her fate and whereabouts. One such writer created a substantial following, theorizing the Russians had kidnapped her and taken her to Moscow. She was churning out communist propaganda films. Another picked up this idea and was quite sure she was actually a spy for the Reds and went home to the Kremlin to divulge her valuable information, whatever that might be. "Where's the first stop, boss?" asked Carl Crane as he lit up a cigar and tossed the match out the window. "Heading up north of Santa Barbara. Coho Beach, Maxwell. Notice a brochure about cabin rentals near Santa Barbara in her back seat." "Isn't there a lighthouse up there?" Carl asked. "I have no idea. Never been up there," Ambrose replied. "So what do you think she's doing, boss?" Jimmy now wanted to join the conversation from the back seat. "Jimmy, I have no idea, but I intend to find out." The sun set directly over the Pacific Ocean as the Packard left Santa Barbara, turned off the 101, and crawled along Highway 1 as it twisted and followed the curves of the rocky beach line. Dusk had settled in as the male part of Ace Investigations parked in front of the Smokehouse Inn just outside Goleta. Inside, the men found accommodations, food, drinks, and a familiar informant, Elmer Smith. Jimmy used the lobby payphone right after they checked in to call Smith, who hustled over for a free meal and maybe some cash for the horse track he favored. Ambrose ordered them all T-bone steaks, baked potato, and salad. Pitchers of Lucky Lager, the only beer that the Smokehouse served because of its proximity to the brewery in San Leandro. Elmer Smith was a degenerate gambler who was half low-life criminal and half snitch for pay for reliable information. Often other criminals would pay Smith for dope on their enemies. Elmer was tall and skinny, about 35, with slick back hair, and pants that he usually wore were too short. He had polished off the T-bone and was chewing bits of the meat that stuck to the bone. "More beer, Elmer?" Ambrose asked. Smith only nodded as Ambrose refilled his pint glass. "How'd you like to make a cool hung, Mr. Smith?" Elmer laid down the bone and used a nearby napkin to wipe the meal's juices from his face. He swallowed the contents of his mouth and took a deep breath. "I'm all ears, Ambrose. Mr. Everwinter. I'm sure you know why we're up here. Gail Gaines." "Haven't seen her." Smith looked straight at Ambrose. "Okay," Ambrose thought, he's going to play it like that. Make him work me for as he gets more than $100. "All right, I didn't actually think you had, but have you noticed anything new up here, maybe hiding out?" Ambrose was ready to ask questions for the next hour. Yeah, well, maybe I have." Elmer was already ready to string this out for a while. However, Carl Crane was still on the marathon bad mood of his life and wanted the investigation to start producing leads. He grabbed the back of Elmer Smith's neck and jerked hard backwards and leaned over into Smith's face. Listen, you worthless piece of shit. The boss here has watched you eat a steak, 2 potatoes, a salad, an entire pitcher of beer. He offers you $100 bill for some information. I bet half the bar over there would know and divulge for a shot of whiskey, and you want a pussy face errand around for some more money. Carl stood up as he's ready to beat the information out of Smith for free. Carl, Ambrose cautioned as others in the inn noticed the loudness of the table. Elmer held up a hand in surrender and nodded as he was ready to tell all. Carl sat back down as Smith took a swallow of beer and set down his empty glass. A while back, I don't remember exactly, a woman came up alone in a Lincoln. She was here at the inn. She made a few calls, and then someone showed up. Who? Ambrose asked sharply. Don't know the guy, but he works at the Hollister Ranch. She left with him, been out there ever since. Coho Bay is one of the few California beaches not accessible to the public. It's owned by the Hollister family, and they were very private and shunned publicity. Little was known of the doings and goings-on at the ranch, but there were rumors, plenty of rumors. During Prohibition, many boats carrying booze dumped their load on the beach, where even the sheriff had asked permission to enter. In the 1940s, there were rumors of dead bodies being buried on the ranch. Many of the public encounters with the Hollisters told tales of rude and mean people who kept to themselves. The beach is only accessible by boat from Gaviota Beach. Local folks there would swear at least a dozen houses exist on the ranch. To enter, you must be let in by an armed guard at a fenced gate. The Frolic Room was full on a weekday evening, and Cecil Vichek was talking in tone solo. The 8 men around him had trouble hearing over the din from the crowd, talking and getting loaded. The men who usually met Cecil at the bar were gamblers, small-time pimps and thieves. Besides knowing their favorite horses for a few choice races, Cecil also sold tips when law enforcement was turning up the heat in certain neighborhoods. On the flip side, he advised the places when the security was lax or non-existent and therefore safe to ply their various trades. This night was different. These men were usually found in cigar bars in Beverly Hills or in walnut-covered boardrooms in Hollywood. They were discussing H.R. Robbie Bugglesworth, deputy mayor of the city of Los Angeles. So is he going to run? Asked a man with a broad mustache. Definitely, Cecil assured them. What about Lewis? I was at a dinner with him last week in Los Feliz, and he's not stepping down. Asked a very serious man wearing a suit with chalk stripes. Lewis is going to make another run, guys. For God's sakes, he's the mayor. But with enough backing, Bugglesworth has some real dirt on the son of a bitch. He needs to hear from you guys. The 8 men went silent for a while. Finally, the mustache man spoke up. So what's he want? Cecil took out a pencil and wrote on a napkin. He passed it around. Then he got it back. He lit a match and burned the napkin on the table. Not a single Frolic Room patron noticed. Okay, Cecil, what do we get? The son of a bitch Lewis won't play ball at all. He's a lily-white clean son of a bitch. I bet his servants wipe his ass for him, the mustache stated. Make a list of your needs or demands, whatever you wish to call them. I'll discuss it with him and get back to you. Bullshit, Cecil. You're pulling his strings. Just let us know if we can do business. I take a great offense at your dirty suggestion, Cecil crowed. All men burst into laughter. Like I said, I'll get back to you, Cecil said softly, and took it as a dismissal. The men finished their drinks and mumbled their goodbyes and drifted out. Cecil slipped over to the bar and asked Waylon Porter for his tab. One of those suits took care of it, man. Nice tip and all, thank you. Good. I'll take a nightcap, Cecil said, and put a couple of bills on this bar. Waylon poured a shot of whiskey and set a glass of ice water next to Cecil as he downed the shot and sipped the ice water. Not your usual group tonight, Waylon observed. What? Cecil suddenly barked. I said. Cecil took one mean look and stuck up a hand. I fucking heard what you said. Why is it any of your goddamn business who I talk to? Waylon was highly skilled in dealing with bad moods and unusual, illogical, drunken loudmouths. I meant no harm. None of my business. Waylon scooted the bills on the bar back to Cecil. On the house, sir. He turned and went to serve other customers. Cecil left the bar walking fast and out into the Hollywood night air. He was a little touchy tonight. The Lord's business can make a man pretty grim, I guess, a short, bald man declared. Yeah, I guess, Wayland, who was now suddenly aware of the man drinking beer he had served for the past hour. Another beer, sir? The man nodded and the bartender poured him another pint. He set it down. The man reached to shake hands. Leroy Ross, Wayland Porter. Leroy took a gulp of beer and belched loudly. He giggled and was clearly drunk. You know he preaches at the jail, hellfire and brimstone, the man stated. Wayland once again took measure of the man. He was fat and round, about 5 feet tall, wore a white shirt buttoned at the collars, sleeves, slender black tie, black suit pants, girded by a strained leather belt. Wayland wondered if he was related to Manny Caputo. You actually know Cecil? Wayland asked as he poured himself a shot of bourbon. Surely, my good man. He came every Sunday during my stay at the county jail. Thundered the gospel, saved many a soul. Heard he was in touch with darker elements for this fair city. He was quite the enigma. What's he doing in a bar like this? Muttered Leroy. What do you mean, a bar like this? Well, look around. This is a far cry from what the man preaches. I'm appalled, sir. Wayland stopped and considered this fat man and his low opinion of the frolic room. I've had a lot to drink and mean no offense, but you usually don't encounter a man of the cloth in a den of iniquity. Wayland wiped the bar for a few moments and looked around the room. He moved close to Leroy Ross and leaned over till he was near the man's ear. Take your fat ass off that stool and get out of my bar. Wayland gritted his teeth. Ross looked stunned and just sat there. Now! Leroy scooted off the stool and hustled out the front door faster than Wayland could have predicted. The California coast was pounded by an unusually active thunderstorm. Lightning cracked every few minutes, followed by thunder that shook the windows of the smokehouse inn. Ambrose Everwinter was restless, and sleep failed him. He donned a long bathrobe over his pajamas and walked down to the lobby, which was closed but lighted, and the front doors were open from the wind. He went out on the covered driveway and watched the rain move along the beach's edge. Far out on the ocean, miles from where he witnessed a light show of colors dancing against the storm clouds, he squinted and saw a small boat with lights on it, its bow now moving in the darkness. He wondered who it was carrying and if it was bound for the Hollister Ranch. He already formed a plan to find out if Gale Gaines was hiding out there and why. The following night the weather was calm again, and the boat Ambrose had hired was ready to go at 1 a.m. Carl Crane went with him, as Jimmy McFarland agreed to wait back at the inn. Not many local boat owners were willing to embark on a post-midnight secret mission to trespass on the feared Hollister Ranch and their armed guards. However, for triple the fee, and after a rash of family setbacks, Willie Reese was hard put to turn down such a large pile of cash, even if the risk was high. Ambrose and Carl brought several guns on board and gave Willie the signal when they were ready to go. The 30-foot boat was old, but the engine was in good shape and roared to life and started out into the black night of the Pacific calm. The night waves were short as they glided past a group of dolphins who turned and went up the coast toward Pismo. Willie's old fishing vessel cruised south along the shore, but far enough out they would be hard to spot. Ambrose had Willie turned off the lights as they now relied on Willie's ability to captain the boat in the dark. The trio stayed silent as they heard the lapping of the waves and could now see the faint lights of Hollister Ranch. The intelligence Ambrose had was the place had a night watchman at the front gate and 2 armed men who roamed the property randomly, but only once or twice per night on the beach. It seemed that most were not foolhardy enough to try entry anyway, so the guards were usually trying to stay awake and finish off their shift. Willie guided the old boat near a beach that adjoined the Hollister property and killed the engines. Ambrose and Carl went down a rope ladder with rifles, handguns, flashlights, and a knapsack of various supplies, including dry clothes and shoes. They were waist deep in the water and waded ashore. On the beach, they removed their wet shoes and clothes and buried them under some rocks by a cliff. In dry footwear and pants, The pair quietly slunk up the beach toward unknown danger in the dark night. Rodney Hayes spent his final weeks in prison worrying about his life when he was thrown back into the free world. The girl he was convicted of statutory rape 7 years earlier was actually his high school sweetheart, but since she was only 16 and her family a respectable member of the Bakersfield elite, her outraged father made sure Rodney went to prison and kept away from the soiled dove of a daughter he had. Couldn't go back home to Bakersfield, ever. No one would hire him, rent him a room, sell him a car, let him buy any groceries. By sheer luck, he met a fellow inmate a week before his release and gave him a name and a phone number of a place who welcomed convicted felons, gave them a job and a fresh start. He and a former inmate, Mickey Bickerson, were hired to be night guards and lived on the ranch. They were trained to stay on the ranch and leave only when absolutely necessary. The business of the ranch and their bosses was none of their affair, and the job at hand was to keep outsiders out. That's all. Lately, there had been some unusual activity at the ranch, and security was even tighter. Rodney and Mickey speculated at length what might be going on, but only the foreman and those who interacted with were nervous and tight-lipped. Rodney and Mickey split up during the night shift and met up at specific times. Rodney used this time to perform his bathroom breaks. He was in the middle of a late-night urination stream on the beach under the sliver of a moon when Carl Crane tackled him from behind. Carl aimed low for the back of his knees. He folded forward and hit the packed sand with a thump. When Rodney came back to consciousness on his back, he was bound and gagged. Carl and Ambrose loomed over him. His eyes, he's awake now, Carl said to Ambrose. Rodney's eyes grew large when he saw them holding guns. Ambrose knelt down and touched his gag on his mouth. I'm going to loosen your gag a little bit and talk to you. We do not want to hurt you, but if you yell out, this man will pull the trigger quickly. Do you understand? Rodney Hayes nodded. He understood. Sweat began to build on his forehead as he feared what was happening. Ambrose loosened the gag as Rodney sucked fresh air in his lungs. Who are you? Rodney Hayes. Are you a guard for the Hollister Ranch? Yep. Are you aware of Gail Gaines is staying here on the ranch? Who? Gail Gaines, the movie star. Sorry, I never heard of her. Okay, has there been a woman staying here that usually doesn't? She drives a Lincoln. Yeah, I saw the car and a woman inside a few times. Now listen real close. Where is she staying right now? Which cabin? Rodney hesitated for a moment, causing Carl Crane to point the gun at his face. I don't know, he blurted. Carl cocked the hammer. Rodney squealed and coughed. She left yesterday. Ambrose and Carl fell silent as they digested this bit of news. But then the voice of Mickey Bickerson shattered their silence. Rodney, where the fuck are you? Carl turned to see Mickey walking down the beach in the dark towards them. He was carrying what looked like a large caliber rifle. Carl tapped Ambrose on the back. Let's go before we have to leave blood here. Ambrose nodded. The men left Rodney tied up and ran as fast as they could toward a grove of palms where they could signal Willie Reese with their flashlights. As they ran, Mickey happened upon Rodney, untied the ropes that bound him. Mickey then took off after the fleeing Carl and Ambrose. As they got close to the grove, Mickey stopped and took aim. The bullet struck Ambrose in the back of his left thigh, and the detective fell bleeding. Carl heard the shot and saw his boss fall. Years of police work lay inside his brain, and in an instant he turned and stopped, aimed and fired. Mickey cried out and toppled over. Carl Crane rushed to Ambrose, assessed the damage to his leg. He found more cloth like they'd gagged Rodney with, and bound up the wounded detective. He then ran to the grove and signaled Willie. Willie returned the flash, and Carl heard the engines come to life. Carl went to Ambrose, who found a piece of driftwood he used as a crutch and was limping towards Carl. Carl helped him into the water, and slowly they managed deeper water and into the boat. No more gunfire was heard. Willie sped them back to Goleta, but he was shook over the gunfire and the wounded Ambrose Everwinter. Carl was used to handling such matters, offered a cash bonus for his silence. Back at the end, Jimmy McFarland was dispatched to Santa Barbara to the home of a local surgeon. The doctor readily agreed to come to Jimmy as he owed Ace Investigations a favor he definitely wanted to repay. The surgeon was able to remove the bullet and bandage Ambrose's leg properly. He left a long list of instructions to care for the wound and a healthy dose of pain medicine. Carl decided to move them out of the Smokehouse Inn and head back to Los Angeles in case the Hollisters came calling the next day. The following morning, Ambrose was being cared for by a private nurse at the Montecito, who brought him his breakfast in the daily paper. Ambrose opened the paper to search for any news of their own failed adventures up the coast when he saw the headlines. Gil Gaines found dead at Point Magoo. Chapter 4. Montecito Days and Nights. The bullet had hit Ambrose in the back of his leg, lodged near the bone, and it was a difficult process to be removed, and in its wake left considerable damage. As he recuperated, Ambrose took stock of his life and his livelihood. Jimmy McFarland and Dorothy Metzger kept the office running, and Carl Crane had been dispatched back to the Smokehouse Inn to see what he could snoop and find out about Gail's murder and the reason for being on the Hollister ranch. Overall, he felt depressed, like a gambler who suddenly went on a bad losing streak. He struck out on the insurance fraud case, the murder of Melvin Stoddard, much less his wife's brutal slaying, and he was unable to locate Gail Gaines in the priceless painting. Ambrose felt worthless. He was unsure if he had ever walked normally again. He imagined the phone lines all over Los Angeles burned with news of his failures. He knew how Hollywood worked, and perception was all that mattered. He fretted he would go out of business, that no one would ever hire him or his office, and he would be broke. Ambrose pored over the news of Gail Gaines, seeking a clue, anything. The pain from the wound made it hard to concentrate. His depression got worse. Jimmy McFarland announced from the front desk and was led up to Ambrose's floor. The nurse led him inside and showed him where Ambrose was resting. Propped up in his wingback chair, wearing pajamas and a robe, his boss was reading the daily paper as his wounded leg lay on a 2-foot stool. Jimmy, good to see you. Coffee? No thanks, boss. I'm good. Here's some get well cards that were sent over to the office. Jimmy handed a stack of cards held by a large rubber band. Ambrose took them and held them in his hands. He motioned for Jimmy to take a seat and appeared to be nervous and awkward. For God's sakes, man, have a seat. Jimmy sat and rubbed his hands. Ambrose looked at him hard. What's the matter? I've called for a solid week, and Dorothy's been giving me the runaround. I asked for the recent mail, and I get a bunch of get-well cards? What the hell's going on? Have we gone out of business and no one has the guts to tell me? Jimmy McFarland looked genuinely shocked and surprised Ambrose by grinning slightly. Why, no, boss. Everything's fine, I think. What the hell do you mean by that? Well, we've been busy. Dorothy and Carl got on the phones and, well, we've been busy. Doing what? Working cases, boss. What cases? Jimmy shifted uncomfortably as he had never been good in the hot seat. Oh, maybe Dorothy could come over and explain. Ambrose felt even more down after talking this way to his loyal associate. Yeah, Jimmy, tell her, no, ask her to pay me a visit, okay? I'm sorry to get so hot under the collar, did you? I just feel down and useless right now. Been sick worrying about the business. Jimmy stood up and nodded. I'll tell her. You'll get some rest, boss. Everything's okay, not bad at all. Ambrose Everwinter had a restless night and got up at 2 a.m. to pour a glass of whiskey. He had purchased a television the year before, but rarely turned it on. He loved the radio. Recently, he found a new station in Canoga Park, WCAN, that rebroadcasted daytime shows all night. The locals in the valley called it the all-nighter. It was a hit for the lonely, the night shift workers, the truck drivers, cabbies, and bars. Ambrose twisted the dial through the static until the station came alive. The Lone Ranger was just coming on, and this was a rebroadcast of a recent episode he hadn't heard. Sunstroke Mesa. The Lone Ranger and Tonto capture a band of outlaws while giving some life lessons to a misguided youth. Soon the whiskey and the sound effects of horse hooves and hot pursuit weaved its magic, and Ambrose let his mind drift into the story, and soon he too was riding a horse upon a mountain into dreamland. The horse snorted and bucked as they encountered a rattlesnake in the middle of the trail. Ambrose hung for dear life, but lost his hat, his favorite hat. The horse recovered, and Ambrose spurred him to go faster, as he could see the Lone Ranger ahead. It looked like Tonto had been shot and fallen off his horse. The outlaws were ahead, but they're getting away. The Lone Ranger looked back at Ambrose and yelled, "Come on, Everwinter, I'm counting on you." Ambrose rode faster and came near the Ranger. As they rode together, the masked man told him, "They're riding into a dry creek bed. They will be trapped right ahead and go right up to the draw. I'll ride down on them. They'll go that direction, and bam, you'll have them. Shoot to kill." The Lone Ranger split away from him, and Ambrose guided his mount up the hill, dodging cactus beds and loose rocks. Just as he made the top of the hill, his horse fell over, and they began to roll over and over. Ambrose could feel his bones being crushed and cried out, "Help me!" The nurse kept shaking him as he awoke, and suddenly he knew it was daylight. "Mr. Everwinter, are you all right? You scared the dickens out of me." "I'm fine, dreaming, I guess," he muttered groggily and sat up. "Dorothy Metzger's here to see you." Ambrose thought about what she said and quickly recovered. "Oh my God, I overslept. Make her some coffee and let me wash my face, comb my hair, and brush my teeth. I'll join you in the kitchen." The nurse helped him up and handed him his crutches. She departed for the kitchen as he headed for the bathroom. Ambrose entered the kitchen on his crutches, and Dorothy and his personal nurse were chatting over coffee. "Dorothy, I'm so glad you came. You met Thelma." He sat down at the table as Thelma left the room. A cup of hot coffee was in front of where he sat. "I apologize for having you wait. To be honest, I overslept." He sipped some coffee, and she looked him over. "You look good, Ambrose. I talked to your doctor. He said you're making good progress. He predicted you'll be walking within a week." "Thank you. This has been quite a trial. Jimmy said you're worried about the business. That's why I'm here." "So?" he asked. She reached down her purse and removed a file of papers. She slid them to Ambrose. He opened the file and then cocked his head. "What's all this?" "Well, let's start there. The first sheet is your bank balance as of 1:30 p.m. yesterday." She paused and waited for him to read it. His eyes lit up. "This is after payroll and the bills?" "Yes, sir." "How is this possible?" "I'm here, Ambrose. We kept the office running after you got shot. I know you were worried about Manny Caputo and the money he advanced for Gail's search. You thought he'd want to insist on a refund as our partial. I know the guy, and he is so tight. I knew he'd want his money back when we failed." Dorothy put her hand up. "Not a red cent. I talked to him. He wants you to recover and come talk to him. Something about that damn painting." "Oh, yeah, I will. I'll find that thing for no fee. It's the least I can do." "Landmark Insurance Company. Are they upset?" "No, Ambrose. They see our relationship as long-term. In fact, I got them to give us 10 more cases." Tears welled up in his eyes, and he looked away. He recovered and looked directly at her. "Oh, my God, Dorothy, you're an angel. I can't believe it. I've been so worried, afraid we'd lose everything." She smiled and drank more coffee. She got up and poured them both more coffee. After filling his cup, she patted on his shoulder. "Trust us, boss. Jimmy and Carl have busted their asses to get us back on track. Tell me about the cases." Dorothy took the file and went through each one. The first one's fraudulent robbery at Fur Emporium in Beverly Hills. Next two are some very fishy disability claims. Two more suspicious fires that look like arson. One involves a $1 million life insurance policy. There's 4 stolen boats. Ambrose sighed and drank his coffee. He gazed around the kitchen and smiled. "Can I ask the status of all of these?" 4 are closed and paid for. We're making progress on the others. Landmark is happy." Later that day, Ambrose's physician made a house call and confirmed Dorothy's optimism about his leg wound. The doctor encouraged more movement upright with the crutches and letting the leg straighten out. After lunch, Ambrose changed into a shirt and pants and made trips around his apartment. He decided to let his nurse go and made a nice bonus for the lady. She kissed him on the cheek when she left and told him to call if he needed to return. After dark, he was listening to the Jack Benny show on the radio making a roast beef sandwich. On the thick slices of sourdough bread, he lathered sides with hot mustard, stacked sliced pickles, tomatoes, onions, and olives. He layered layers of pastrami on top and opened a PBR with a church key. He felt like his old self again, especially after the news about Ace Investigations currently so healthy. He acknowledged this day was like a shot of B12. Ambrose washed dishes by leaning on the countertop and letting his leg go limp beside him. The phone rang. He wobbled and grabbed one crutch and hopped over to answer it. Ambrose here. Ah, Mr. Everwinter. It was Ching Tang, the manager downstairs. With his accent, it sounded like, ah, Mido Evo. Yes, Chang, what can I do for you? Well, I thought the nurse would answer. I did not want to bother you. I know you're hurt. Sorry. I'm much better and sent her back to the agency. Ching, you're not bothering me. What is it? Man here. He wants to see you. Come up there. Who is it? Mr. Carter Gaines. Only it came out in broken English like mirror cargo Gaines. Who? There was a discussion Ambrose couldn't understand, and then an unknown man came on the line. Please excuse me, Mr. Everwinter. My name is Carter Gaines. I'm Gail's brother. May I please impose on you while you convalesce? A few minutes of your time? Certainly. Let me speak to Chang. Chang, send a gentleman up, please. Thank you for your call. Carter Gaines seemed to be about 40 years old with a distinguished look. He wore a gray suit, black tie, black hat, wingtip shoes. He was medium height and weight and bore a resemblance to his sister. Ambrose offered him scotch and he agreed. They sat in the living room and settled in, but a little uncomfortable as the men did not know each other. Thank you for seeing me. I hope you're healing up, sir. I know you were shot trying to rescue my sister. My family owes you a debt. Your words are too kind. I failed. Yes, but you were trying to prevent that. I'm here to ask a favor. Okay, then ask. It's presumptuous of me just to show up at your door and ask a wounded man for a favor, but I didn't know how else to do this. I want you to find out who killed Gail and why. Ambrose fell back into the easy chair and sipped a bit of scotch. I say this comes as quite a surprise. Well, you're a superlative detective and highly successful. Plus, you were on her trail, know more inside information about her life. I believe I spoke to Manny as well. Since I got shot, I've been shut off from the world, so to speak. I know nothing about her death or any events that may have transpired there. Neither do the police. Ambrose sat dumbfounded by the events of the day and was silent for a few minutes. Carter Gaines guessed the detective was thinking and stayed silent. I'm sorry I couldn't attend her funeral. I know a little about the way she died. They found her in the water at Point Magoo. She'd been strangled and thrown into the ocean. The fishermen found her. She was in terrible shape. Gail was from Montana. Did you come all the way from there? No. I went to law school and landed a job with a firm specializing in real estate. I work and live in San Diego, so I've heard of you before this trouble with my sister came up. She was fooling around on Manny. Did you know that? Carter shifted uneasily. I suspected she was, but no, I didn't know for sure until Manny called me after he hired you. Why did Manny call you? You two friends or something? Not exactly. I met him at the wedding. He seemed like a nice enough fellow, but I was under no impression she loved him or was even attracted to him. Money, maturity, stability? Ambrose asked. Probably, but you have to know Gail was a sweet, sincere woman. She felt she owed Manny and intended to stay loyal to him and made him happy. And, yeah, like any marriage not built on a firm foundation, it was bound to be fraught with trouble. Gail blossomed into America's sweetheart. Her mailbox was full of proposals from young, attractive men all over the world. Anytime they went out to eat or drink, every man in the place wanted to talk to her. It was intoxicating, but drove Manny insane. They argued constantly. Manny began to hit her. She called me several times crying. I finally advised her to get out. I didn't know she was cheating on him, too. You think Manny had anything to do with her disappearance or death? Lord, no. He loved her. He wanted to work things out. Yeah, he got physical, but he was remorseful afterwards. Mr. Everwinter, I don't think he was behind it. He's not that much of a plotter, a thinker. You think he's stupid? Yes, in a way. Any idea who was behind this? Not a clue. Ambrose studied him and poured more scotch. They nodded a silent cheers and imbibed. You know about the missing painting? Ambrose inquired after a low voice. No, what are you talking about? Oh, never mind. Manny accuses her of taking a valuable painting that belonged to his family. He never mentioned it. All right. I owe him a visit, so leave me your phone number and I'll think this over and get back to you. Is that all right? Ambrose took his crutches and arose. Carter Gaines took his cue and got up. They shook hands and said good night. Well, I hope you're enjoying the Everwinter Files. We're going to leave it for this week and come back next week to see what happens next. There's live music going on here at Cafe Electrum. Dickens Beach is peaceful. Pour another glass of wine and let's round out this episode with some recommendations. Hope you're doing well. The book recommendation I'm giving this week is Like a Rolling Stone by Jan Winter. Jan Winter has been called by his peers the greatest editor of his generation. He's the founder of Rolling Stone magazine. His deeply personal memoir vividly describes and brings you inside the music, the politics, the lifestyle of a generation, an epoch of cultural changes that swept America and beyond. The age of rock and roll and an era of consequence, what will be considered one of the great watersheds of modern history. Winter writes with the clarity of a journalist and an essayist. He takes us into the life and work of Bob Dylan, John Lennon, Mick Jagger, Bono, and Bruce Springsteen, to name a few. He was instrumental in the careers of Hunter S. Thompson, Tom Wolfe, and Annie Leibovitz. His journey took him to the Oval Office, with legendary interviews with Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, leaders to whom Rolling Stone gave its historic full-throated backing, from Jerry Garcia to the Dalai Lama, Aretha Franklin to Greta Thunberg. The people Winter chose to be seen and heard in the pages of Rolling Stone and tried to change American culture, values, and morality. Like a Rolling Stone is a beautiful written portrait of one of man's life and the life of a generation. Last summer, I went to a very unusual concert by youngest son at the Greek Theater here in Hollywood. It's a group called Highland. It was an incredible performance. This is their music. Highland is an experimental folk music band made up of members from Denmark, Norway, and Germany. Their music is based on texts and runic inscriptions from Germanic people of the Iron Age, Viking Age. Highland described their music as amplified history from early medieval Northern Europe. It's incredible. Highland, Heilung. Check it out. The TV show that I'm recommending this week is Waco, American Apocalypse. It's the 30-year anniversary of the tragedy in Waco, Texas, of the Branch Davidians. It's on Netflix. It's incredible.
It was a bunch of people that you could tell really loved each other. It was a very caring environment.
What about these people here? They think I'm the Son of God.
They believed that the end of the world is coming soon and that they were going to be in a battle with the federal government.
They were amassing enough armaments to outfit a small army.
The ultimate goal was to arrest David Koresh and to seize all of the illegal weapons.
The media, this is a big damn story.
It made such statements as, "We are ready for war."
Okay, y'all been preparing 8 months for this. How long do you think we've been preparing?
I don't think she's coming out.
Coming out.
As a negotiator, our goal was always saving as many lives as you can.
We have moved in, we've taken that turf, and we're not leaving.
Got children in there. Let's work on getting these kids out. They came in and attacked us. That definitely was not us that shot first.
You could have dropped a bomb on us and we would not have come out.
We'll stay one of the holes here.
David knew he was dying.
If he died, game over.
They believed that David Koresh was the key to their eternal salvation.
A lot of people have told me that he was trying to groom me.
There's no doubt that David Koresh had sex with young kids.
The whole time we were having sex, it was a Bible study.
That's insanity. I pull the trigger. Lead us down. Say, they all come out. It's over.
Do you put your trust in the Lord?
I am the Lord.
Well, I hope you like this episode. We'll go out with a little more wildness from Highland. Come back next week for another episode of The Poet Behind the Microphone. And go to the website, poetbehindthemicrophone.com, for links to all the recommendations. Thank you for listening.